Ghost. Cold-hearted. Yeah, the cracker got a cap, but we gon' do the do. 100 band foreign car, we ain't rooted poo. Of y'all young, we keep a case, dog, Scooby-Doo. See a coon, slap a coon, I went 2 for 2. Yeah, y'all color, but y'all squares, 2 a Rubik.
Touch on understanding the word of the Most High. So first aspect is first understanding the concept of the word of the Most High, because many people, they think that the Most High's words merely encompass just like spoken words. So like somebody could say the word speak, or somebody could say the word run, or someone can say like ouch. Like they limit word as something that you merely speak. But in terms of the Bible, the word conceptually, it deals with reason, or like a message, or like a sentiment being discussed, or like a matter. So first we're going to show that biblically with the book of Genesis, the 15th chapter. And I'm going to get my screen share so that you can read it for me, good brother.
Yes, sir. This is Genesis chapter 15, starting with verse 1, or just verse 1. After these things, the word of the Lord, or Yahweh, came unto Abram in a vision, saying, Fear not, Abram, I am thy shield and thy exceeding great reward.
So the word of the Most High, based on Genesis 15 and 1, came to Abraham. At this point, he was Abram, but it came to Abraham in a vision and said, Fear not, Abram, I am your shield. Your reward shall be very great. Right. So in other words, the sentiment is that the Most High wanted Abraham to not fear, because he's his protection and his reward will be great, which included him having a multitude of offspring. As we continue to read throughout the book of Genesis, you started off in chapter 12. And then also it mentions having possession of the promised land. And you continue to read that in Genesis 15 and also Genesis 17. It's a plethora of chapters we would have to go through, but I'm giving you the references that you could go to. And then also rulership over our enemies, at a latter time. And you read that within Genesis 17. So like basically the Most High is telling Abraham, or he's delivering Abraham a particular sentiment. And he's saying that I'm your protection and that you're going to have an exceeding great reward. Now, if you look at the start of this, it says that the word of the Most High came, right? So in this example, the word is referring to reason or a sentiment being expressed, and it's not merely just a spoken word. It's not just he just said some things to to Abraham, but he communicated a sentiment. So like Abraham, he understood his particular sentiment, and this was a continued sentiment and understanding that was passed down. And by the time we get to Jacob, this is understood, to his descendants is understood. I want to make sure everybody is tracking what I'm saying. So family, if y'all understood that, drop a 1 in the chat. So just to make it clear, the word of the Most High isn't just spoken words, but it's a sentiment communicated from the Most High as well. Drop a 1 if you can understand that.
And Shalom, YP. And how does my mic sound now? I didn't realize my mic wasn't hooked up. So I was talking computer mic at first. But how does the audio sound now?
It sounds A1.
All praises.
I see a 1. All praises to the Most High. And drop a 2 if y'all don't understand, and then we could address anything that's not understood, because I don't want anybody to misunderstand anything. But yeah, I'll give this example, right? So, and brother, you could let me know if you've heard this this type of verbiage before as well. But have you ever heard or seen anyone say, like when they want to speak with someone, they'll say, "Hey, well, brother, real quick, let me have a word with you."
Mm-hmm.
They not coming to just say, "Well, here, this is a word I'm having with you," and then they just say one word and then that's
right.
it.
Right.
But they want to communicate a thought or like a message or a sentiment to you because they want you to understand what they're saying. So it's just that simple. It's not and like I think we would understand this practically more than anything else, but I think a lot of times there are a lot of things that are superimposed on the Bible that are removed from reality. When these people that wrote the scriptures and that communicated within the scriptures, they were real people that moved in real life. So I think that's something that we also have to keep in mind. That's a topic for another day because it's a whole lot we can dive into with that, right? But continuing on, unless you got a point, we could jump to the book of Deuteronomy 30 because we're going to show another example.
Deuteronomy chapter 30 and verse 14. But the word is very nigh unto thee, in thy mouth and in thy heart, that thou mayest do it.
Come. So the passage says right here in Deuteronomy 30 and 14 that the word is very near to us and in our minds, or it says heart right here, so that we can do it, right? And the word that's in reference right here is speaking about the commandments that's found in the law that the Most High gave to us via Moses, right? And we're going to read contextually just in a little bit, but something I didn't mention is the word that was spoken about in Genesis 15 is the Hebrew word davar, right? It's the same word right here in Deuteronomy 30, same word. And we're going to touch on this a little bit later, but it's this Hebrew word davar, and it actually corresponds with the Greek word logos, which we're going to go into a little bit more extensively, but not at this moment. But I want to show y'all something. So when y'all look at this in the Strongs, it'll say a word, a matter. We see right here, this is the word davar. Then it says word. Then right here, this is a Greek word, which is logos, which we're going to touch on a little bit later. But those words are essentially equivalent, or like they're equal in like force and range. So they're utilized the same way. So just keep that in mind because we're going to go into that a little bit later.
If thou shalt hearken unto the voice of Yahweh thy God to keep his commandments and his statutes, which are written in the book of the law, and if thou turn unto Yahweh your power with all thine heart and with all thy soul.
Con. So we see that the subject matter includes the commandments and the statutes within the law. And, the point was to hearken to the commandments. So keep in mind, that's what's being laid out first and foremost. So you can continue on. You can read 11 on down to 14.
For this commandment which I command thee this day, it is not hidden from thee, neither is it far off. It is not in heaven, that thou shouldest say, who shall go go up for us to heaven, and bring it unto us, that we may hear it and do it. Neither is it beyond the sea, that thou shouldest say, who shall go over the sea for us, and bring it to us, that we may hear it and do it. But the word is very nigh unto thee, in thy mouth and in thy heart, that thou mayest do it.
Con. So it says when you continue on from 11 all the way down to 14, it says, this commandment that I command you this day isn't too hard for you, neither is it far off. And, some people, they'll see this and they'll think, oh, this is like a singular commandment because it says this commandment. And a funny story, I was listening to a conversation and they seen something like this. It said commandment. And they was like, well, what's that one commandment that he commanded? And I'm just like, yo, that's a crazy way to look at that, right? Remedial, right? Excellent word. But obviously this is not talking about one singular commandment, but when you look into this, which we're going to go into, it's actually talking about the code of law, right? And I'm going to show you all real quick so that again, I'm not just saying something, I'm showing it to you. So this is H4687, and it's mitzvah, right? Which is translated as commandment a lot of the times, or commandments. So I'm gonna show y'all this from the Brown Driver Briggs, and we're gonna get it out of the way real quick, right? Just as a side note, if somebody is constantly just like, teaching something, and they don't read it to you out of the Bible, but they don't like prove it to you, they're just like, oh, and they're just like talking, and no scripture comes out for like 15, 20 minutes. It should be a red flag that raises up. Sure, the brother Hurt, he would back me up in that sentiment. But you constantly want to prove somebody or prove what they're saying in the scriptures. That's why, like, we go into the scriptures and we actually show it, we put it on the screen, so that it's not just like, okay, brothers is just saying something and we just putting it out there. Like, no, we're showing it, and proving it in the Bible as the scriptures speak about. But if you can, just read this for me right here, King.
Following the commandment, code of law.
See that? So, I mean, and that's clean right there, and it gives you Deuteronomy 30:11 as one of the outlined scriptures. So this is literally how it's applied. And again, right here, the commandment that Deuteronomy 30:11 is speaking in reference to is the legal code of the Most High God. So it'll be what people call the law of Moses, but it was the law that he gave to Moses to give to the people. And I'll give a quick example. Like in school, we had something called the Code of Conduct, and the Code of Conduct, it was a compilation of like rules and decrees that you had to abide by in order to be considered as well behaved, so to speak, within the school. So, like, for instance, code of conduct, it would include, keep your hands to yourself, don't speak while the teacher is speaking, things like that. And so, like, again, the code of conduct, or the code, would be a singular word, but it's inclusive of a plethora of things, and it's communicating a myriad of concepts. So it's the same way with the singular word commandment. So I want to make sure that this is understood. So if y'all understand that, just drop a one. The singular word commandment doesn't always mean it's just one commandment. Shout out to Israel or us. Most jobs have that as well.
Right.
They have a code that you're supposed to abide by, but it's not one thing included. It's a myriad of standards that are supposed to be met, right? But again, in reference here, that word is the law of the Most High God. And again, the law of the Most High God is, or the word of the Most High God is his sentiment, his message, his reason, his intellect, right? So I want y'all to keep that in mind, because a lot of people that are saying the law is done away with, or the law was death and all of these things, essentially they're saying that the intellect of the Most High God, so the intellect of the Most High God is death, or is to be done away with. That's what they're saying. They're saying it doesn't apply anymore, which is a crazy doctrine. And I think, like, when you start to get into the severity of what the word truly is, you'll start to see that some of these things are just not just off, but super heretical to even utter. But you got any points, King, before I move on?
Shalom, brother Drayson, Kings and Queen coaching group. Just like the way that verse 14 reads, but the word is very nigh unto thee, in thy mouth and in thy heart, that thou mayest do it. This is basically like saying, you know what to do. Do it.
Right.
You have the tools necessary to do it. It's not something that's strange that you are confounded, and as we seen in the context above, where it was saying, like, It's not in the sea. You know, you ain't got to go look
Mm-hmm.
for it. You know what to do. Just do it. But
Right.
yeah, that's it.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point.